This was around the last time that I was truly invested in Sonic the Hedgehog, way back in the beginning. Growing up, video games were hard to come by, but I was given a hand-me-down Genesis as my first console by one of the cooler dudes that my mom dated back in the 90s. And thanks Sam, I hope you've been doing alright all these years. And while the games that he gave me alongside the system were a bit hit or miss, I mean, what the hell is even Crew Ball Motley Crue themed pinball. He did give me two games that laid the foundation for what has become a lifetime hobby, and those were Mortal Kombat and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Hyperstone Heist. It's kind of the off-brand Sega Genesis version of Turtles in Time. Games were hard for me to come by at that time, with them being far too expensive to justify during even birthdays or Christmas. But luckily, if I was good and kept up on my chores and did well at school, we would be able to go to Blockbuster Video and rent a game every once in a while. And it was there that I was introduced to Sonic. The speed, the music, the characters, and Jesus Christ, the colors, those Sega blue skies. Man, I must have rented each game in the original trilogy at least a few times. Even once getting the chance to play Sonic and Knuckles one time, but without owning any of these games physically, I never really got the chance to actually stack the cartridges. So my dreams of making the Sega Tower of Power were never a reality. But as anyone from those days could tell you, the popular games were pretty hard to come by in the rental industry. So most of the time I came home with shitty movie adaptations and games of real dubious quality. But every once in a while, I got something pretty sick. But all good things come to an end, and at some point during the Genesis's lifespan, my console went away one day. I don't know if it was stolen or sold at a yard sale, simply died or whatever, maybe lost in a move, but it was gone. After losing my system, by that age, skateboarding, music, and reading became the way that I spent most of my time, with the odd friend letting me get in some couch time with things like GoldenEye or Smash Brothers. I still love games, but they were transient in my life until I was in my teenage years and I was gifted a PS1 when the price went to about $100. This was around the time that the PS2 was really hitting its stride. So for me, the PS1 and years later the PS2, a different dude that my mom was dating gave me one of those. But yeah, that's about the only real nice thing that asshole ever did, so I'm not even going to mention his name. But yeah, the PlayStation consoles were really the beginning of me keeping up with video games in any serious capacity. So my nostalgia is really centered around things like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, and Metal Gear Solid. But I still look back at the Genesis era and the Blue Blur with a lot of fondness. But by that time, Sonic was inaccessible to me. Siloed off to the Dreamcast, and although years later Sonic did start showing up on the PS2, I had outgrown the mascot. And the little that I had seen of the 3D games, they just left me confused. I mean, Sonic has soap shoes now, and who are these guys? And then to make matters worse, I often started finding myself on the darker corners of the internet as a teen. And let's just say that after being exposed to Rule 34 content of Sonic on 4chan and later the whole Chris Chan phenomenon,
young lady,
Sonic started becoming more associated with deviancy and some of the strangest people I've ever talked to. I know these people do not represent all Sonic fans, so if you are a Sonic fan watching this, I'm not talking about you. But yeah, some of the fan base can get weird. This was also around the era of Sonic 06, so between terrible reviews and Sonic kissing an actual human, yeah, Sonic and some of his fans just got wild.
Sonic is no longer considered Mario's rival because he kissed a human girl in front of Amy fucking Rose.
And I basically wrote this character off at this point. A character that I once liked for running fast and collecting rings, who had now gotten weird in his adolescent years, developing a strange attitude, plots that went completely off the rails, a love for ska music, and kissing humans. Sonic was on a trajectory that I just couldn't follow, ultimately culminating in one of the strangest movie trailers that I've ever seen. And at this point, Sonic had really begun to zap to the extreme, and in a lot of ways the character had become nothing but meme fodder.
don't call anybody.
At least from an outsider's perspective. But around the time that fans were demanding that the Sonic movie's CGI model get a much needed facelift, something interesting started happening. A few of the Sonic games were starting to be received well by critics and fans alike. and it seemed like Sonic Team was starting to take feedback from its fan base more seriously than they ever had seemed to in the past. Even going as far as to hire a fan programmer, Christian Whitehead, to usher in some of the best received Sonic games to date. It was at this point where I started noticing the franchise's change in trajectory, and while I didn't play any of these games during this time, and I didn't go see either of the now 2 movies, people in my friend group, people who didn't seem to be diehard Sonic fans, were starting to tell me that the recent games were solid and that the movies were pretty good. And then Sonic Frontiers came out, and people seemed extremely positive on it, and at this point, I wanted in. It was time to see how my old friend had been doing after all these years. And after mentioning this one too many times to my girlfriend, she really does just notice everything, she gave me a copy for Christmas. And thanks, babe. And so after the first time in nearly 30 years, I've now played a Sonic game. So where do I even start this? I haven't played a Sonic game in decades, so if I mention things as new and exciting in this review, keep that in mind. I'm not up to date with the hog, even if I do have some vague idea of what he's been up to. So what is Sonic Frontiers? For a quick and dirty explanation, this is an open world Sonic game. You run fast, grind, soap shoes are DLC only this time I'm afraid, and otherwise hop and bop your way around one of 4 different island zones. The map is littered Ubisoft style with collectibles, but more on them later, and you use said collectibles to unlock the next waypoint to advance the story. So it is really just every game out now at this point in terms of overall design. And as a quick aside, I treat these videos on this channel as if they are parts of an overall series. So previous videos on this channel feed into my overall opinions of each game I cover. So with the last game I covered being Forspoken, I couldn't help but compare and contrast the two, as both games use this standardized open world design, are both games where traversal is the main hook of both experiences, both of these games have some isekai elements to their storytelling, and both games feature combat that has a decent amount of depth to them, but in both games, the enemy typing never truly requires mastery over these systems. But I'm just going to say this right now, Sonic Frontiers is a much better game than Forspoken, for a multitude of reasons. And I would even go as far as to say that Sonic Frontiers is just a really good game where I ended up having a lot more fun than I could have ever expected. First, Sonic Frontiers, for all of its open world map pollution, features environments that are usually just amazing to explore, with the one exception being Chaos Island, but I will get to that a little later. Grinding and running at a high speed into largely automated roller coaster style paths both look and feel amazing. That is, when accidentally nudging the analog stick doesn't result in Sonic flying off to his doom, but these paths are varied and require the player to always maintain a state of awareness as they feature context-sensitive reactions. A rail that you are on might be coming to an abrupt end, requiring that Sonic hop laterally onto a parallel rail. These Donkey Kong Country barrel type things require that you hit a corresponding button when you land in them. Certain gaps require either an air dash or clicking in the analog stick to do a light speed dash through a set of rings, and even gymnast bars that litter certain paths require specific timing windows to get across. So whether it be taking a path towards an objective or just following a roller coaster track in order to reach a collectible, you always stay on your toes as Sonic moves with an incredible sense of speed, even if in a lot of cases what is happening on the screen is way cooler than the order of buttons you had to press to pull off set maneuvers. The environments themselves are varied and stunning to look at for different reasons altogether, whether it be snow-covered mountains, volcanoes, or just sandy expanses as Sonic leaves footprints in the dust behind him, with terrific lighting, weather systems, and time of day affecting the overall mood of these places. And time of day that was one thing Forspoken didn't have. Even if the rain effect in particular in Sonic Frontiers is a bit shitty, as these are just weird static flickers that cover the screen and they're not at all convincing. But moving around these environments with the spectacular ambient soundtracks in the background never ceased to delight over the nearly 30 hours I spent with the game. Even from the title screen, this game features a certain melancholic mood. And this mood is always present as you traverse through the environments, and when coupled with some of these realistic and scenic views, and even more so when the rain kicked up, I couldn't help but think about Death Stranding. And this vibe hit even harder as most of the communication in this game is in the form of these weird holograms. But all of this comes together in the form of a beautiful world where the music always carries the somber tone, and I found myself repeatedly shocked by not how immersed I was, But how often I would shout to my girlfriend in the other room, like, this game is beautiful, and do you hear this fucking music? And really, I think that it is in this setting of tone where this game truly shines. And not only when you're running through the overworld, but in everything that this game has to offer. The quick rundown of the story is that Eggman tries to steal some technological secrets created by the Forerunners on this cluster of islands called the Ancients. In doing so, the defense systems protecting the island attack, and Dr. Robotnik's AI companion named Sage drags her creator into cyberspace as a protection protocol. And then Sonic and team on their way to investigate the Chaos Emeralds that have been drawn to this place. The whole team encounters a wormhole that drags them into cyberspace as well. But, Sonic alone is able to get out because he just runs real fast. But from this point on, our mission is to figure out a way to get our friends out of this techno-limbo state, investigate the secrets of the island, and understand what happened to its inhabitants, secure the Chaos Emeralds, and fight some Evangelion meets Shadow of the Colossus-inspired titans. The storytelling here isn't necessarily going to win any awards, but as far as excuses for action go, this is more than enough motivation to get Sonic to do what he does. And every character interaction has these melodramatic stakes to them that not only flesh out the party and their relationship, but also add to the overall bleakness of the island. It's good stuff. It's anime writing, but it's fun and effective anime writing. And really, this strange and mysterious cluster of islands always manages to feel exactly that way with the music, lighting, and overall tone. And with these characters always adding their input or trying to help out these little Coco creatures relive the Ancients' actions, it always manages to really elevate the stakes and add some melodrama to every new island. Over the course of this adventure, Sonic often has to infiltrate cyberspace. And these are more traditional Sonic affairs, with Sonic being tasked with speed running through all these levels while collecting a specific amount of rings and collectibles, with all of them being stylized after previous levels in the series. And between the glitched out representation of classic Sonic levels and the just incredible Wipeout 3 style electronic music that just runs the gamut between minimal techno to drum and bass bangers, just packs so much energy and life into them that I couldn't help but laugh out loud at just how over the top they were. But while I'm being completely honest, it was in these levels where I really started to notice something. And that's Sonic, he doesn't always control the greatest. It's fine when you are charging your way through the overworld, making your way from one waypoint to another, but in these challenges, some of which, especially level 1, 2, for some odd reason, require very tight platforming, almost to the point where I felt like I was optimizing a speedrun in this mode just in and of itself. And between Sonic having this very distinct stiff handling and this odd habit of having controls freak out whenever there are enemies on the screen, as contextual button presses mean different things altogether when they are present, this movement could just swing wildly from being an absolute joy to control to being an absolute fucking nightmare depending on the context. And it really wasn't just in these challenge courses either, as a late game objective that sees Sonic climbing up these massive towers had more than just a few moments where I went from having so much fun to wanting to throw my controller through the TV within just a few attempts. As sometimes trying to boost one direction while enemies on the screen would change the context of my actions and send me flying back to the bottom just one too many times. And really, that was the push-pull dynamic of my enjoyment of this game. When things were working as they were intended, I was generally having one of the better times that I've had with a platformer in recent years. But then there would be like a weird enemy that required Sonic to parry their attacks, and the window just never felt completely right. Combat in this game can be a lot of fun as you chain different attacks and enter into this Phantom Rush state, which is just pure anime fun, but with certain enemies having shields or strict windows where they're vulnerable, I often found myself resorting to cheaper long distance attacks just to get rid of them as soon as they popped up. But when things are clicking in this game, it's out of control. As in so many open world games nowadays, the map is completely obscured at the jump of this game. But there are missions that download new sections directly into Sonic's mind. And alongside making the map more visible, these usually add things like new paths or grind rails to the environment to aid in traversal. And so the loop is always run towards one of these missions, maybe getting distracted by a fight or some of these spectacular Titan battles that really raise the bar as far as spectacle goes. Complete a short puzzle or challenge that shows off more of the map, and then carry on with your current objective of either collecting enough doodads to have the next plot moment with whichever buddy is on the particular map you're on, go into cyberspace to get another key that unlocks the next Chaos Emerald, or just continue exploring the map. And it's a tight loop for the most part. Collecting medals always has you scanning the map looking for the appropriate path towards the destination, even if on the third island, Chaos Island, these paths were just confusing and interlocked in such a way that there was seldom very clear how to progress from landmass to landmass, causing this particular zone to be more frustrating than fun. And then mini boss fights are sudden and varied enough to where they were always a welcome distraction, and every plot beat or boss fight was usually quite the payoff. And especially so with these supersonic encounters. I mean, just holy fuck. Where the music on the overworld is ambient, lonely, and moody, and the cyberspace missions feature EDM that suits the action, these scenes are ridiculously over the top, featuring double bass and metal vocals that just hit out of fucking nowhere. They are cheesy, they are anime, but they just work. And in no small way, this full commitment to these moments, even featuring musicians from Sleeping with Sirens, just show that Sonic is down to get weird in pursuit of having these moments hit. And they hit hard. This is equal parts Devil May Cry, Asura's Wrath, and Metal Gear Rising Revengeance in terms of ridiculous, and I'm here for it. Even if these fights never contain the mechanical depth of those other games, these moments are just insane things to witness. Sonic Frontiers is a weird game. Anime storytelling that in no small part features the genocide of an entire alien species, insane set pieces that have a ridiculous size and scope, music that can fit every moment, no matter how disconnected it is from what you were doing just moments ago, and a tone that always comes across as earnest, even when things are getting out there. And the game has this strange art style that rides the line between realistic and super stylized, and this was felt nowhere more than Big the Cat's fishing minigames. As when landing something like a marlin, I generally laughed out loud when seeing this cartoony character holding up a realistically rendered swordfish in a completely unnatural way. Writing that is equal parts sincere and self-aware, and considering the way that they littered it with tongue-in-cheek jokes and even connected it to the past Sonic games that I never played, I could tell that while this is a game that caters to the new kids that are excited for the Hedgehog, a lot of this writing and the moments were directed towards a core audience that is now in its 30s and 40s. And then movement that could be equal parts fun and frustrating. This game is just weird as fuck, and I'm here for it. The parts that succeed hit really hard, and the stumbles only manage to detract from the experience until the moment that they were over. I liked this game a lot more than I could ever have imagined. It made me feel like a kid again, even permeating my mind in the moments that I wasn't playing, to the point where I found myself absent-mindedly just badly doodling the hedgehog in my work journal during some downtime at the office. It was a game that just was what it was, and it did everything that it was trying to do pretty well. And I've now found myself in the curious position where I feel inclined to check in on some of the games that I have missed while I have spent time away from this franchise. Maybe not that particular one. I mean, what the hell is a werehog? Coming back to this series was far more interesting and fun than I could have ever expected. This isn't a perfect game, but it is a game that knows what it's doing. And in a lot of ways, it was the opposite of how I felt while playing Diablo 2 Resurrected, where I said, that old saying was true, that you can't go home again. But in some ways, Sonic Frontiers showed me, while that may be true in most cases, you certainly can visit. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching. It's always greatly appreciated. And if you liked the video, please consider dropping a like, subscribe, comment, all of the YouTube stuff. And with that said, I'll see you in the next video. You guys are all beautiful people, and I hope you all have a great day.